In a week where FUFA, the federation that governs football in Uganda, ruled using the Article 18 of the FUFA competitions rule that football in Uganda had to come to a halt, that is that the 2020-2021 season, it's been met by so many reactions across in Uganda and over and abroad. On the show tonight, we have a guest that will be discussing this and more, plus everything in terms of football, the industry. It's season 2, episode 29 of the KCCFC TV show. I'm your host, Magero Moses Mwanje is my name. You and I are walking this journey together. Now, just like I told you, we have a guest this time on the show. It's been a while since we had a guest on this show. Most of the times, people have been saying we miss guests on the show and what. We have a guest, and we'll be talking everything football in Uganda and also, across everything about football. And it's none other than someone that I address by different capacities. But in this particular one, in this kind of context, we're going to be addressing him as the vice chairman of KCCFC. And his name is Aggrey Ashaba. He's been around football for quite some while. And we'll have a chat with him, and hopefully, just like I said, you walk this journey together. Aggrey, very pleased to have you on the show. You've been on the KCCFC TV show before, but it's not as a guest in the studio, so very pleased to have you.
Thank you, Moses, and I'm glad to be here. It's enriching after, it's about a year now since we launched the TV. I'm happy to be here and to see and to converse with our fans and all those that have been watching KCCA TV, and would like to thank all our fans who endeavor every Sunday 10 p.m. to watch the show, to receive news, information and all the highlights around the club. And we hope that going forward we can be able to provide them with the content that is enriching and can be exciting for them during their Sunday evenings and Sunday nights. Just to take you still back, you've talked about the show making a month. Did you ever recall some of these things happening? Yes, you might have been part of this when it was starting. Did you ever imagine it achieving whatever it has been able to achieve? Well, the vision is that eventually the club should run its own TV, and I think down the road when we are discussing whatever we need to discuss today, I'll be able to touch onto that and why it is important for content development and why football clubs need to tap into such revenue streams to be able to make more money, but also to keep in touch with its customers, with its fans and the general public.
We will delve into the exact topic we're supposed to discuss today, football this week. FUFA came up and applied Article 18 of the FUFA competitions rules. And ruled that football in Uganda had to come to a halt because of the upsurge in the numbers of cases in Uganda. And that meant that we will not have the league finished just like it happened in the 2019-2020 season. So as a person who has been around football, as an administrator, do you think this probably was right for the game? Do you think we should have waited? What is your take on that?
I think the law provides for such situations. I think my only disappointment would be in the fact that there was a bit of laxity that allowed for this law to prevail. The law is supposed to cure issues of force majeure in things which are unpredictable, that happen because of the cause of nature. But in this case, if you look, for example, where we had to rest for about 3 weeks because the national team is going to play friendly, where there is no major tournament, and then you put the whole national league on the back pedal to allow 25 players, some of which are not even playing in the league, to go ahead and play a friendly in South Africa, which would have allowed us to actually complete this league. And when we speak about the topic for today, I'll try to show how the three arms interact and why this was not anticipated, and risk management from the UPL in this case was very lacking to allow such a scenario to happen. And I'm saying that yes, FUFA took the right decision because the law provides for it, but we shouldn't allow situations that take us to such not really controversial, such a precedent. Because it happened last season, because we were not prepared for what happened. There was COVID and so many things were happening, there was no end in sight. And yes, it's something that was taken. This time we played the league under circumstances that are abnormal, but we normalized them because we allowed the games to go on. So we should have been able to predict and plan to make sure that if we had the pulse on what was happening in the ecosystem around us, we should have been able to predict that there would be a looming or a pending lockdown, and tried to be able to complete the league in a shorter period and as quickly as possible.
Not very good for the industry there, but talking about football, the industry, and probably what are the arms that make up football, the industry? Someone out there would think the game only evolves about the 90 minutes that they see on the field of play. What are some of the arms that make up football, the industry?
Well, I'll say that my personal experience as for many years around the game, and having been part of everything that a normal person would go through, from a young fan to name it, until sports administration at the highest level, and leading a football club like KCCA Football Club, I've come to realize that there are about three, which I call the Trinity, 3 areas or 3 pillars. And for those who are Christians, understand what a Trinity is. What I call the Trinity of Football, which is football the game, that you say we play over 90 minutes. Then there's football the business, and that is the business end of the game. And then football the industry, and that's the ecosystem under which we operate. Without those 3, there's no way you can be able to run a successful football club or a successful league. And if you look at where we are currently as football in Uganda, and what it was 15 years ago, what it was 30 years ago, there's not much difference. And yet, we are in an era which has provided us with the best, I would say, best network for information, to be able to compare ourselves with leading leagues across the globe, within the region, and across the continent. Information at our fingertips at whatever moment that we need it. And it has really brought the whole world into a global village. But why is it that we're not moving, we're not going ahead? What is the challenge? And I would say that the biggest challenge we have is the appreciation and the understanding of the football trinity across board, especially from the leaders of the game and all those who are taking part within the football environment, to be able to appreciate that there are certain things we need to do differently. There needs to be a whole paradigm shift across everyone who is involved in the industry for us to be able to move forward. Because otherwise you make 2 steps forward, you make 3 steps backwards. Winning a title, winning leagues, having these players move from this place to another does not grow the game, does not grow the industry, does not grow for football clubs, because these things have been happening. So how can we, as the generation now that is taking care of affairs of the game, be able to move our game to a much higher level than it was 15 years ago, than it was 20 years ago, than it was 30 years ago?
Well, interesting. I'm a Christian, and I would definitely want to know what exactly entails in the Trinity of Football. You mentioned about football, the game, the business, and the ecosystem. We'll start it off with football, the game. What exactly is entailed in football, the game? Someone out there could think it's only the 90 minutes. What exactly is entailed there? Well,
and like you rightly said, is that generally we all think that football is just football, the game. It's just the 90 minutes where players come and demonstrate what they have to demonstrate over 90 minutes on the field of play, and that is it. No, that is not it. However, even just inside the game itself, by the time the players come to demonstrate what they have to demonstrate in 90 minutes, for that goal you see in the 15th minute or 30th minute, for that foul you see a defender making, or the tackle or the dribble that is done, there is so much that happens in the back end that allows these players to be able to optimize their talent and potential, and the coaches to be able to prepare them so that they can serve them to the public. Because it starts all the way, the whole value chain starts all the way from scouting and recruitment. Okay. And in the scouting and recruitment process, you probably need to look at, in our view as KCCA Football Club, is that we look at 4 fundamentals, which are summarized in, or abbreviated in a term called TIPS, which is technique, insight, personality, and speed. So technique is basically to look at what the player does with the ball. How do they control? How do they pass? Are they double-footed? Are they good at dribbling? Can they take the shot? The things that people do on the ball. So when we have the scout, and right now we have about 1 scout, even the coaches that go out to look at the players that we need to recruit, whether it's for the junior academy or for the senior side, these are some of the things that they need to look out for. Then we look at insight, or what you would call football intelligence. Does this player have the ability to understand or pick up instructions? How do they interpret these instructions in match situations? how do they make the choices? What things do they do when they enter the field of play? And the intelligence to be able to handle different changing dynamics within the 90 minutes. Training, do they learn by seeing? Do they learn by doing? Do they learn by instruction? All these things that you need to do a bit of an analysis to understand the type of player that you're bringing on board. And can they be able to fit within the system that you'd want them to have? So that intelligence or insight of the player is very important, especially in the modern day football. And when you look at fans, usually, they will say, oyo musambi mugezi nnyo, oyo musambi ategera omupiira. That's what we call insight, is that he doesn't go into the tackle, but he wins balls. He scores because he's usually well positioned. He reads the game fantastically from different people. Some of these abilities are innate, but others are trainable, especially from the coaches. They can teach these people to be able to behave in a certain manner so that they can optimize their potential. The other aspect that we look at is the personality of the player. What type of player is he? Is this someone who thrives under pressure? Or is this someone who crumbles under pressure? Can they play at the highest level? If you increase the intensity and the opposition, can they be able to deliver? These, are they trainable? Are these the people that if they find adversity, they can overcome? How resilient are they? And then the final thing is the speed. Speed, usually you will measure it in different aspects. One is the physical speed, is that you can actually be athletic. You run 70 meters with the ball. Then there's the speed of thought. How quickly do you think on the ball to solve situations? How quickly do you make the decisions on the field of play? That is the speed of thought. Then there's also explosive speed. You will find players that, Msambi, are slow? Yes, there's explosive speed. Not everyone has it. Others are innate. Others you need to train them. Is the fact that he can be on the ball in one situation and in the next he has burst out of it. So all those types of speed, some are trainable, some are innate, but when you look at all those four elements of tips, it is what will then eventually culminate into the complete player or the player that you're looking for. And note that everyone needs to have them. Some could be strong in different areas and you supplement with the rest. And then the manager's job is to make sure that the areas where that person is weak, the rest of the team can complement to get the whole and be able to deliver on the field of play. And that's just on recruitment and scouting. Obviously, the other thing is around tactics and how they have evolved. Then nutrition, medical, data and analytics, and all those things, because when a game is going on, the manager is just like you and me. He will see certain moments, but he will forget most of them. So without the benefit of a data or performance analyst, sometimes he will make a bad judgment on a player based on something that he remembers in the game. Sometimes it may be emotional, other times is that the information may not be accurate. So what clubs have gone ahead to do, especially in Europe, and what we are trying to do even at the club, is that they go back now and look at scientific evidence. They look at the matches, they see what the player did, what the contribution was, and then they can make the decisions based on that. Then obviously the other bit is about nutrition, about the training methodologies. Before, and I will tell you, a couple of years ago, teams used to train endovo. Nga 15 minutes to the end of the training session, bagamba katisawa ya ndovo. Kuitima. And it was part of the methodology. Yeah. Others would run 25 or 50 kilometers. But the game is 90 minutes. The longest distance a player can run is probably 15, 20 yards on a sprint. So there's no need for him training to do 100 meters because he will never use them. So what you want are bursts of speed and rest, speed, rest, endurance, and making sure that within the 90 minutes, physically, they are not tired because the game is played 90% in the head. The rest is just what you direct the body to do. So when the player gets tired because he has not been groomed, conditioned, and trained properly, then he can never give you the best out of what he could be able to do. And that's just football, the game. We could have a whole conversation on that for a whole day, just to break down all those elements. But that's what comprises football, the game.
Definitely, right there. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break. What I learned from football, the game, that is, he talks about insight, speed, technique, and personality of a football player. And this, he says, applies at KCCA FC. We're going to come back from the break, and then we'll be talking about things like football, the business, and what he says, football, the ecosystem. But all that after this break. Now, welcome back from that break. Aggrey is still with me here in studio. He talks about football, the game in the first segment. This one will be tackling football, the business. What exactly does it entail? And also, we'll be talking about things like, Aggrey, does football need a boost just like the other sectors? We've seen it just after the first lockdown. Some sectors like tourism received a boost from the government. Do you think football needs that kind of boost? But first of all, what is football, the business? And also, we will talk about, does exactly football need that boost?
Okay, two questions, good ones. I'll start with the football, the business. Just like we've discussed on the football, the game, it is football, the game, that now defines the type of business that you would be able to run. And business, by its very nature, is profit-making. So it's important to understand revenues and expenditures, profit and loss. But because football is the product that we do, or the things that we do, what we sell is actually entertainment. And that is why it's very critical, especially for a club like KCCA Football Club, that we have a specific type of identity. Because it's that identity that mirrors what we do and attracts us to the rest of the population, our consumers, our customers, and our fans. Because without the type of game that we play and that we are known for, then it becomes a mixed communication to the consumer. So they don't know what to expect. Yes, other clubs only play to win, but as KCCA Football Club, we play to entertain, but to win. Yes, winning is paramount, but we have an obligation to entertain our fans. So that when they go back home, they can speak about moments and situations to their kids, wives, and children, and it can be an experience for someone to come into the stadium. For someone to come to the MTN Omondi Stadium, he should be able to come to relieve stress, have fun, but also get a win. That is why, when we are talking about football, the game, it is the fundamental building block to the business aspect.
Okay.
So, coming to the business bit, and this is something that we need to appreciate more as people who are into football, is that how do clubs make money? Clubs make money predominantly in about 3 revenue streams. That is commercial, broadcast, and match day revenue. Match day revenue is the easiest. How many people come into your stadium and how much money they pay. Broadcast is usually the title rights, like right now, StarTimes bought the UPL or the Uganda Premier League rights to be able to air the games. And then the clubs share in that revenue. That's broadcast rights. Commercial includes the sponsorships, includes the different properties that you have, like stadium naming rights. For example, we have MTN with us. We have StarTimes as a shirt sponsor, and we have different partners and sponsorships like Britam, Vivo Energy. All those come into the commercial revenue. And you can sell different properties from billboards, from name it. Anything that the club thinks can monetize is part of the revenue streams that they bring into the revenue basket. But alongside, as the world has evolved, there's what new media has brought. New media has disrupted the traditional content development. And this is things like Facebook, Twitter, social media, name it. Yeah. And where content can be now delivered on 2-second screens, not just television, but on 2-second screens for people who have lived all their lives using the internet, netizens as they call them. So how do you fulfill that person's desire to watch games on the move, to receive content that is non-footballing? And that is why KCCA Football Club decided to start the initiative of the TV as an extra content development side to give our fans something different from just matches. While match revenue is rather broadcast revenue would be one of the big revenue streams, but then there are other things which are not served by broadcast rights holders, because broadcast rights holders are going to show you just the game and probably halftime match analysis and pre-game and maybe post-game. 15 minutes and 20 games. But we are saying, for example, KCCA Football Club has an engagement of 1 hour with its fans every Sunday. And this is to speak about things that have not been bought by a broadcast rights holder. So this content development is very key. And it is here that I say that if content is the new future, or is the king, or is the king of the future, then content distribution is King Kong. Because without the distribution channels that you need to reach all these people, then you cannot be able to maximize your revenues. And that's on the revenue side. So when you come to the expenditures, obviously, one thing I forgot on the revenue side is that there's now a significant amount of revenue from player sales.
Okay.
So a club like KCCA, we've done tremendous business in the last couple of years in player sales. And I will say for a fact that probably our revenue split now is about 70% club generated revenue and about 30% from our parent mother entity, which is KCCA. And we believe that if we continue the trend and the things that we are doing, we shall be able to reach a sustainability of about 100% generated revenue from the club itself. As KCCA Football Club, we try to make sure that we spend within our means. Right now, we are not yet making any profit, but at least we have moved the red numbers, and that is the losses, from I think 530 million to about 100 and something million in the last financial year. And we think that going forward, probably in the next 1 or 2 years, we shall be in black numbers. And when we get into black numbers, it means that we are doing appreciably well. Is that we are running a sustainable business entity. It is not just a charity organization. We are not running a social organization. So, and that is why it is important that even when you don't understand these things, you need to appreciate the fact that they need to be done. And then you hire people who can be able to give you that extra value. The challenge we have in Ugandan football is that everyone thinks they can do everything and everyone thinks they know everything. Whereas one of the biggest issues is that you need to know what you don't know so that you can be able to hire or enlist people who know better than you to be able to do the things that they need to do. And creating the systems that you need to have in place. Because part of business success and continuity is governance. And plainly, I would say governance is basically power and its distribution. So where does someone's authority start and stop? And where is the rest picked up? And what are the checks and balances? And you need all those. Other people think that probably maybe it's not important, but you cannot go forward if you're not doing the right things. You could have success today, you will not have it tomorrow, you will not have it the other day, and after probably a couple of years, you'll still go down. We've seen this happen, and I don't wish it on any club. So I would urge every one of us to be up to speed on the things that are happening and that need to be done. And there's a reason why football as a football is not as successful as other industries. Okay. You go to telecom, go to banking, go to media, like for example now Next Media Services, any of the areas that are successful, they have understood what it means to have revenue, expenditures, hiring the right people, the right caliber of people, and creating governance frameworks that allow the entity to be successful. Now, coming back to your question of
does football need a boost? Before we go to football, does football need a boost? You've talked about KCCFC is still in the red, in the red, not yet in the black. How does the club survive? Because isn't that something like spending more than you
Yes, it means that our expenditures are more than the revenues we bring in. But you see, for businesses, sometimes you cannot be profitable all the years around. So you'll carry forward your losses as you hope that the subsequent years, the losses keep reducing until you get into the black numbers. So we have a CFO, we have a CEO, all these, and that's their job, to be able to touch that pulse. So they will tell you that this we cannot spend on. And it's not an emotional decision. It's a scientific one. Wow. So, because in other places, they will tell you, you can't spend on this. He says, no, but we have the money. Yes, you could have the money, but the numbers are telling a different story. The cash could be there, but the numbers are saying you cannot go this side. You have to offset this particular critical obligation. So, that decision making that is scientific, backed by numbers, is what I would urge every person to be able to embrace. And the other mentality we have is that no, because anyone who is successful, even presidents, even whoever it is, they are advised by different people. They don't run organizations on their own. Sure. Actually, the people who make the decisions are usually not the presidents. But because they pronounce, but the people who have done the decisions are the people in the back end. Is that they're saying, for example, you have a choice to spend, let me say, on development of something, buying a player, and maybe paying taxes or NSSF or whatever it is. And the finance person will tell you that the money is available, but this is what is pending, and this is where we need to spend. So you need to listen to them.
But as a football club, you want a certain player, and taxes are pending. Probably that is the player to take you to the Champions League group stages.
So that's the choice that we need to make. So you'll have to sit with the team and say, okay, I understand this is the obligation, but this is where we want to go. How do we offset? So the decisions will be based with scientific evidence. And I'm not saying that every time they will propose a position, you may have to take it, because there are also other considerations to do with the broader picture. But you take the broader picture on advisement, knowing that if this does not happen, you have a backup plan to make sure that this can be plugged in the near future. Because ideally, if it does not happen, the club collapses. And I'll give you a couple of clubs that have played across the continent, especially in Africa. And not only Africa. The other day, Goma here was fundraising. Okay. Enyimba. A couple of clubs across the globe that have gone through this, and they have eventually collapsed because financial management was a big challenge. They overspent, they did not anticipate, they didn't do any risk management, and at the end of the day, the clubs are there and not there anymore.
Right at it. Does football need a boost, one, and also the impact of COVID on football, the business, as we wind up this segment?
Well, I think football needs a boost, but the problem is that we've not packaged ourselves to be on the table where some of these decisions are made. And I'll give you quick statistics. Uganda has a very youth population with a median age of 16 years. 70% of that population is below the age of 30. You have about 18 million Ugandans between the age of 15 and 30, which is critically the age that is employed by football. And then you have about 3,800 Ugandans turning the age of 18 every single year, making about 1.3 million Ugandans turning 18 every single year. Now, football, KCCA Football Club, employs about 80 people. Multiplier effect times 3 is about 240 people. Because every single person that KCC employs is probably renting somewhere, has to buy food somewhere, and has to do medical. So they are keeping another 3 jobs in action. Payroll is over 100 million every single month, meaning that every single month we put 100 million into the market to increase purchasing power and demand from the market. Times 12, that is about 1.2 billion every year that as a football club we unleash into the market, that comes into buying and consuming products. So if you extrapolate that for the 16 clubs, you're probably looking about 3,500 people that are affected by the game. And this is on a direct basis. And this is youth, people who are earning directly from the football game. So yes, football would have needed a boost. But how we have positioned ourselves, and that will come probably in the third pillar of the Trinity, which is football, the industry, stroke the ecosystem. How have we made our case in the environment where decisions are made? How do they view the game? And who are the people who speak for us? Do they command the respectability, and do they understand? Can they sit on the table across and speak to CEOs? Because the National Task Force that was appointed by the President was headed by a renowned businessman, Emmanuel Katongole, deputized by the CEO of Standard Bank Group, East Africa. How many footballers or how many people within the game can sit across these people and discuss and be able to support why football needs to be bailed out? Sure. And be able to create a reason for us to be considered? And that's the other question that I told you when we were opening up around why the league ended prematurely. Because we know the people in the National Task Force. We should have had these conversations. We should have known that probably there would be another lockdown, and then made interventions to make sure that some of the games that were deferred should have been played earlier, and a befitting champion would be gotten sportingly. Yeah. But yes, while the law provides, we need to be abreast of the other linkages that the game has. So, with those numbers, like I said, yes, football needs a boost because football is in the same category as tourism. I know there have been debates on the president classifying football as leisure, but leisure is a huge industry. Yeah. It's a huge industry which is about 600 billion. That includes tourism, includes recreation services, includes sports and entertainment. All those are part of the leisure industry. So yes, as they've built out tourism, as they've built out the hospitality industry, I think we were due, but probably we did not do enough to be able to speak to the powers that be to be considered for these bailouts.
Interesting stuff right there. Has football, he says, has football, or are the people that represent football are able to sit on the table where discussions are done? Quite interesting right there. We'll be coming back with the third segment just after the break, but we still have so much to discuss where we'll be getting to know the third pillar, that is football, the ecosystem, and also we'll go back to the business more time where we'll find out how COVID is likely or has affected football, the business. All this after that break. Well guys, welcome back from that break. We still have Aggrey on the show, and we're going to be tackling football, the ecosystem. We've talked about football, the game, football, the business, and how all those arms are affected or affect the game. And we're going to be finding out, Aggrey, football, the ecosystem. What exactly is football, the ecosystem, for a layman person out there watching?
Okay, so basically, for me, we've tackled football, the game. We've tackled football, the business, and how the two relate to each other. Now, football, the industry, which is the ecosystem, is fundamentally actually what affects everything else. Because this football cannot live in isolation of all the other things that surround it. And the ecosystem involves the legal and operational and regulatory frameworks. Those are things to do with FIFA, the national laws, labor laws, taxation laws, all these things that affect business and industry, because eventually they will come to us. And I'll give a simple example. Currently, they passed a law, I think URA, that's supposed to be collecting taxes from football clubs. But the football clubs are making zero money. Zero money, I would say. None of them is making a profit. But they've passed that law, and no one is speaking for us. And it's going to affect us, because if you're not tax compliant, it means even you cannot speak at a table where sponsors will be. Secondly, if you look at the linkages, because the other ecosystem is in the linkages. And the linkages, like I said, how do we link into the other industries? Health, education, media, energy and power, and all these areas. And I've just given a simple example. Assuming we had linked into healthcare, for example, as sport, probably we should have finished our league. Probably we should, I know that the federation has been trying to do a lot of stuff to make sure that we play, even under limited spectators, closed doors. But I think we need to be on the conversation table. I know sport now has gone also into the National Planning Authority, the NDP3, which is the National Development Plan, because without you being in that framework, then the government cannot plan for you. So the ecosystem actually is the things that affect all the other two. Because if tomorrow, for example, they say that the labor law is providing a minimum wage, and they will say that every single Ugandan, where they are employed, they need to be paid $1 million shillings. How many football clubs would still be in operation?
Not very many.
So why we need to interest ourselves in such is to make sure that as an industry, we also fight and lobby for the things that will support the growth of the industry. So the ecosystem is fundamentally the things that will enable, they are enablers for the other two. Secondly, I know a couple of universities are putting out sports scientists. I think that's what the degree is called. Yeah. But they're not relevant to the game.
Why?
Because the things that they study at the university are not what we need. So sport needs to make a conversation with universities to say the opportunities we have, for example, are in performance analytics, they're in data, they're in videography, they're in the things that we need on a daily basis. So that's what the universities do. They teach, and then we can absorb them. But now you pick someone who has done sports science, and it's all theoretical. They have no single skill that can be deployed in the practical environment. And then you have to retrain them all over again. So how do we match those conversations, those linkages, to make sure that they work together? 3, the ecosystem also needs to appreciate the fact that to grow the game, we need to understand how we can relate with every other person. Because media, probably, we need it because they support us in different ways and different areas. So how do we paint a good picture of the game? And I'll give a simple example on the impact that COVID has had on tourism, before and after. So you go to national television, yes, we have a pandemic, people are dying, but how you communicate it also resonates with the people who are thinking of coming into the country. It's a similar thing with football. How do you communicate? Yes, there could be flaws, there could be things that are not going right, but how does media communicate it? And have we engaged them in such a manner that they actually communicate things that can be able to attract and create more interest? I will tell you for a fact that there is no single league of any industry across the globe that does not have challenges. They do have them. But the media has worked in such a way that they are saying, okay, we can always dust up the issues that we have amongst ourselves, but to the public, we are painting a specific picture. And you go to any leagues and you will see. It's not that they don't have, they do fight.
The English.
They do fight. Every single day they have differences, they have challenges, but they have agreed that, listen, this is our product. And because it is encompassing so many people, it's employing so many people, and it's also an image of the country. We need to paint a clear picture for it. So the ecosystem is just as important as the other two. Because without it, the other two become, they cannot function appropriately.
Fantastic. You exhaust all of them. We definitely would have wanted this kind of discussion to go on and on. Football, the game, the business, and the ecosystem. But the pandemic, since last year, 2 seasons now, football not ending sportingly in Uganda. That is in terms of the StarTimes Uganda Premier League and the StarTimes FUFA. Oh, sorry, the big league, that one. So the impact COVID is likely or has had on sport. Probably, are we going to have more sponsors? Someone could think in that kind of way. Are sponsors likely to reduce? How do you envision this whole kind of thing? Because it has gone on from March last year, and we're in July 2021.
I think it's a difficult moment for everyone, and just not football, because even when you look at the growth of Uganda as a country, I think it has been downgraded to about 2.2% for the next financial year, which means that across the whole business environment, everyone is now tightening their belts because there's not much growth that is going to happen. So sponsors are going to cut back on a couple of things, and one of those that ideally would be the first point would be sponsorships. The people who are putting money into the game, individual clubs and everyone else, they also do business. They're also going to be affected. So you expect that even the money that they are contributing to their football clubs is also going to go down the road. So COVID is going to affect everyone, and it's for the foreseeable future. It is going to create challenges for the game, and even people coming into matches, a few of them will be able to afford because some people are out of work.
You talk about a double-edged challenge, but someone out there will argue that where there is catastrophe, someone has got to get a little bit creative, probably to meet certain demands. Do you think probably this is the time clubs, or probably the game, got into some of the things that you think could bring revenue to a football club, for example? Merchandise will still be coming in, whereas revenue from the gate collections will be cut or has been cut. Probably games being shown onto maybe YouTube or various digital platforms and probably to be paid for. I mean, what are some of the things that you think as the game we can pick on to just, stay afloat, just like you say?
I think for me the things that we need to do now is to try and plug the leakages and the expenses. First, I think we need to speak to the authorities, and the issues around taxation. need to be put on the back burner. I know they have provided tax holidays for different industries. So football needs to also speak in that direction. We can also speak about reviving the game. And because part of the money that is coming from IMF is to boost businesses under COVID. Let us have that conversation with the ministry officials and the National Task Force and get football onto the table. If clubs receive some amount of money, they'll keep afloat. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge challenge. Yes, innovation is good, and I think at KCCA we're trying to do that, content and distribution. But again, the revenues will not be much because the purchasing power of individuals is continuously going down because of the challenges of COVID.
Aggrey, when you talk about purchases, the revenues not being much, KCCA right now is in the red line. Is there hope that probably the club can now cross to the black, because in case the government does not give the waivers in terms of taxes to sport, what is the plan?
No, I don't think we will be able. Initially, we had thought that in the next 2 years we would be able to break even, but with the challenges, it may be difficult. But obviously, now we also have to tighten our belts, because in the transfer market, we need to go low, because otherwise it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And you know, the transfer business has also gone down. Before would make probably $1 billion in player sales every year, but with COVID, even the player market has gone down, especially coming out of Africa.
As we wind this up, KCCA FC for the second season on the bounce will not have any silverware, because it will not win. It has not won the Uganda Premier League. It has not won the Uganda Cup, just like it happened last season. KCCA FC will not also be playing in the CAF. That means that there will be some revenue that the football club will not gain, because there's so much spent in the qualifiers. But when you make the group stages, there's some money that comes in. Don't you think it's getting darker for the football club now that even the money that probably the club would look to, that if we make the group stages, probably you expect $1 billion or $2?
Ideally, continental football. First of all, CAF Confederations Cup is a loss-making venture, and that's what the numbers are. It's a fact. The moment you go into CAF, whether you go into the group stages or not, you're making losses because of one, the travels across Africa, completely cumbersome and long and extremely expensive. CAF Champions League, if you make the group stages, you just break slightly even, and that is because the federation came in to help on the tickets. But if we were still paying for our tickets, you'd make a slight loss. So all that revenue that you're speaking about, really, because usually we share it with the players as a bonus for qualification, and then the rest goes into the expenses that we have to incur in traveling and per diem and name it. So all that revenue, whether we make it or don't, is really spent in those activities. So there's not any revenue that we're looking at. So it does not really affect our P&L very much, because if you get the 1 billion, you'll spend it on the activities of CAF. Here you get half 2 billion, you'll have to spend it on the activities of CAF. So there's not much difference. However, yes, we've gone 2 years without a trophy, which is sad. And we're not going into the continent, which is also sad. So we are rebuilding the squad to make sure that we can get back our glory. We are rebuilding to make sure that we can be as competitive as possible. We are rebuilding to make sure that we get back our top position in Ugandan football. And we hope that next season will be brighter and we can be able to continue on the continent.
Fantastic discussion, Aggrey, we've had. Your parting shots straight in that camera in a minute as we wind this up.
Well, thank you for having me. I know this is a very broad conversation, but I would say that for the game to make any fundamental strides, we need to turn things upside down. I made some proposals to the Federation, and one of the things that I was predominantly focused on is changing the football club business model. Is to make sure that we have funds being part of the ownership of football clubs, something that we're already doing at KCCA, and at a stage where it is appropriate, we shall be informing our funds to make sure that someone who becomes chairman of a football club passes the proper and fit test. Not everyone needs to be a chairman of a football club, because some people don't understand these things, and they affect the whole brand and the whole value of the football industry. Also to say that not everyone who starts a football club needs to enter a promotional league. Because for the past 15, 20 years, everyone who has been promoted has gone back. Everyone who has been promoted goes back. So we need to find a proper fit on how we get people into the Premier League. Because the Premier League is the ambassador, is the flagship tournament for a country. You cannot keep bringing in people just because they have started a football club and they can come in and then they leave the following day. Then obviously the other thing is to restructure how clubs get promoted. I think we need to look more at regional, at tribal issues, at district issues to make sure that we create a certain rivalry that can grow our football industry. But having Kampala, which has 15 teams, some teams have 2 fans, it does not grow the value at all. So my issue is we need to look at the game more holistically, put a little more detail into it, because otherwise there's not much we are doing for the progress of the industry.
Fantastic discussion we've had with the Vice Chairman, Mr. Aggrey Ashaba, that is the Vice Chairman of KCCFC, feeding off his bottomless well of knowledge. It's not every day that you have him on the show. It's been a fantastic one, I should say, and we will have him more and more on this platform. Guys, that's been it for the show. Just to give you a reminder that 8 of the KCCFC players are in Saudi Arabia, and that means that 8 of the 10 that was summoned initially of the part of the 40-man squad made the final squad that will be playing in the Sekafa Under-23 tournament. That will be in Ethiopia, and it will be starting on the 17th of July after it was postponed. 8 of those are Charles Lukwago, the goalkeeper, and the captain of the football club, Matovu Hassan, and another goalkeeper making his first outing with the national team. And then we have Peter Magambo also making his first outing with the national team, Musa Ramadan, a player that has been part of the setup, that is the Under-20, now upgraded to the Under-23. We have Serada Steven there, we have Brighton Ukani, Julius Poloto, the assistant captain, and finally Samuel Wamala. So we wish them the very best, plus the manager of the football club, Mr. Molebe Kwaso, who is also the head coach of the Under-23. We'll be giving you that and more next week, where we possibly will be winding up the 2020-2021 season. Guys, my name is Magero Moses Mwanji. We'll be back with episode 30 next week. Have a good night.